Hello everyone, this is Varsha and welcome to Programming Knowledge. So today our agenda is the types of version control, how was Git created, and some of the Git terms that is usually used. So let's get started. First, let us understand the types of version control. Now in the previous tutorial, I explained that Git is a distributed version control system. Now to understand what is the distributed version control system, we need to understand the different types of version control system. So here we have three types of version control system in general. One is the local version control system. The second is the centralized version control system. And third is the distributed version control system. So first, the localized version control system. Now in this localized version control system, we use a database to keep track of files. Here you can see we have the version database over here in this example, in this diagram. So we use the database to keep track of files. So on a local machine, there is a database, and every time we store a code, there will be change in the database. So there is a one-to-one interaction between the developer and the local machine. Now, one of the example of localized version control system is the revision control system, that is the RCS, which is not generally used now. We use the distributed version control more. But yes, to understand why the distributed version control was created, we need to understand what are the different types of version control system. So here we have there is only one interaction, one-to-one interaction between the developer and the local machine. Let's take up an example and then understand. Here we have a developer and his name is Raju. Okay. Now, for example, if Raju stores all his files in his local machine, this is his local computer, and he saves all his file in the local computer. And if his system just stops working for some reason, what will happen? He will lose all his data, and there is high chance of error, and also there is single point of failure. There's a single point of failure because if his system stops working for some reason, he will lose all his files. In short, all the changes that were made or the projects that he created will be lost. So there is a high chance of error and there's a single point of failure, and that is the biggest drawback of localized version control system. Now, because of this drawback, we have the centralized version control system. Now here in the centralized version control system, we have a central VCS server. So basically we have a server and a client relationship over here. So the server is the master repository, and basically what I mean over here is that the project is on our server. For example, if Raju wants to work on a project, he will pull the project files from the server, and once the work is done, he will push those files into the server. But there is a drawback. If the server just shuts down or just stops working, you will lose all the data and you cannot roll back. So because of this drawback, we have the distributed version control system. So Git is a distributed version control system, and the local and the centralized version control system is not used a lot. Now in distributed version control system, instead of having a single repository, which was the server in the previous slide, that is the centralized version control system, here every single developer or the client is having their own local server, and they have the entire copy of the history and the version code with them. Okay, so and the code which they have, this copy, entire copy will be there on their local machines. So basically the user will clone the entire project file from the central server. This is the central server that we have, the server computer. So here basically the user will clone the entire project from the central server. Now for example, here we have two clients or two developers. One is Raju and the second is Farhan. Okay, and their project is in the server computer or the central server. This is the central server. Now here Raju and Farhan will take a clone of their project. they will take the clone of their project. Now this central server will contain the project files, the like version 1, version 2, version 3. These are the project files that the server computer will contain. It will have all the project files, and the developer will clone their project and do whatever changes they want to, and they're changing the files in their local server. This is an important point. This developer, like for example Raju, is making some changes in their files and they are doing it on their local server. And when they're done with the changes, they will move files to the central server so that the changes are visible to the other developers. For over here, so that the changes are visible to Farhan. Farhan can see those changes, whatever the changes are, he can give a review to Raju. So all these things are in a distributed manner. So now, what if the central server goes down? This central server just goes down. What will happen? See, in that case, Raju is having a copy. Farhan is also having a copy in their local machines. So these project files can be copied to the central server. So here the user will also interact with each other, and they can also copy their project files to the server. So that is why Git is known as a distributed version control system. So don't you think this distributed version control system is the most powerful version control system? Here we have so much of user interactions. Also, there is no disadvantage of losing the data, and if the server also goes down, each and every developer is having their own project files in their local machine, so they can copy it back to the server computer. So this is all about the distributed version control system. I hope things are very clear so far, and if you have any doubts, then please ask in the comment section. I will definitely reach you out. Now let's proceed. Here we will get into somewhat a history of Git. We will understand how was Git created. So the creator of Git is the Linus Torvalds, and he is also the creator of Linux. As many great things begins with destruction, so Git also began with a bit of destruction and some controversies. So here there is a small history of it. It's not that lengthy. So what really happened is, in 1991 to 2002, the Linux kernel was in development, and the exchange of files was through patches or archive files, and there was no version control system at that point of time. But as the project was growing, so the creator of the Git realized that we need to use a version control system. So they started using a BitKeeper version control system. Here it is. This is the BitKeeper version control system. Now from 2002 to 2005, they were using the BitKeeper version control system. But there were some controversies in 2005, that is, the relationship between the community that they developed, the Linux kernel, and the company that was the BitKeeper, they broke down. That is, there were some controversies, and the company said they decided that this tool is not free of charge anymore. Okay, so now basically this act prompted the developer of the Git and the community to develop their own tool based on some of the lessons that we learned in the BitKeeper. Like BitKeeper was a version control system, so they learned some lessons that what sort of a version control system it is, and they started creating their own tool. So when they were creating their own tool, there were some goals of the new system, that there should be speed, there should be simple design, it should be fully distributed, and it should be able to handle large projects like the Linux kernel efficiently with speed, and they should accommodate large data size as well. Now this is how in 2005 Git was created. Now since its birth in 2005, Git has evolved and matured to be the easiest version control system. It's amazingly fast, and there are very different features also have explained in the previous tutorial. So it's very efficient with large projects also. So this is how the Git was born. Now moving to the terms that we generally use, or we will use in this entire tutorial. The first is the directory, which means the folder. Then we have the terminal or the command line, which means the interface for text commands. CLI, that is the command line interface, and CD means change directory. When we need to change the directory from C to D, we will use the CD command on the command line. Then one of the most frequent term that is used, that is a repository. Now basically repository is the place where our project or folders are kept. Now there are two types of repository. One is the local repository and the next one is the remote repository. Local repository, Git local repository, is the one on which we make local changes. Typically, this local repository is in our computer. Like here you can see, this is the local repository, it's in our computer. Whereas remote repository is the one of the server. It is a machine situated which is just miles away and it is a server. So basically what I was explaining in the previous slides about the centralized version control and distributed version controls, the server was the remote repository and the local repository was the computer which Raju and Farhan was using. Okay, so this is the local repository and remote repository. Coming to GitHub, I will explain what is GitHub and what is the difference between the Git and GitHub in the next tutorial. But yes, GitHub is a website to host your repositories online. It is basically a service. Okay, so it's a website to host your repositories online. We will understand GitHub in the next tutorial more easily. Then we have clone. Now I have been using clone many times. So basically clone means it brings a repository that is hosted somewhere like GitHub into a folder on your local machines. Basically you are just copying a project onto your local machines. This is what clone means. Add, that means the git add command will add files to your contents. Commit means it is used to record the changes in the repository. Push, now pushing is basically an act of transfer commits from your local repository to the remote repository. As I explained in the previous slide, what is the remote repository and the local repository. So basically, you will transfer from your local repository to your remote repository. Similarly, pull is the inverse of push command. It fetches and merges changes from the remote server to your working directory, that is the local repository. Now basically the git pull command is used to pull a repository. You will pull the repository, you will commit some changes and then you will push it back to the remote repository. These are the basic git terms that we'll be using in the entire tutorials, and then there are many more, and if we come across any of the terms that is different from all these terms, I will definitely explain. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope that you learned something new, and if you have any questions or any queries, you can reach me out. You can comment in the comment section. I will definitely reach you out. Now in the next tutorial we will understand what is GitHub and what is the difference between Git and GitHub and how do we install Git and Git bash. Okay, we will see some installation in the theory part also in the next tutorial. So join me in this video series, and if you like this video then please hit the like button, and also don't forget to subscribe our channel and ring that bell icon so that you don't miss out the next video. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.